Hello there, welcome to some more from chapter 11, and we're going to get going things here. This is the page you should be on, and we will get going here as we just finished talking about collecting like terms, simplifying those expressions, and now we're going to look at how to solve when we have negative numbers involved here. So let's just jump right through the process that we've learned here. This particular question says x minus negative 3 equals negative 10. One thing I'd like to do on this question I talked about earlier is changing that to addition. Remember, 2 marks, add the opposite. This is really x plus 3. X plus 3 is the same thing as x minus negative 3. And so when I have x plus negative 3 when I have x plus 3, all I need to do is add the opposite. Add opposite. And that will isolate the x because this 3 plus this negative 3, that makes 0. So you have x plus 0, which is essentially x. All right, so you have to do the same thing to the other side. We're going to add negative 3, and that makes it negative 13. And I believe that's what the answer is. X is negative 13 when we solve that. Same thing on number 2, we have negative 7 plus x, so we have to make this negative 7 go away. So we're going to add positive 7 because positive 7 plus negative 7 is 0, so that's all gone. So we're left with, excuse me, we're left with x, and we have that equal sign. Now notice as well that I'm keeping that equal sign straight line, like we talked about earlier. And if I do something to one side, I have to do it to the other side as well. All right, so since I added 7 here, I have to add 7 here. And that comes out to be, I believe, 21. X does equal 21. Also remember, you can always put that value back in here and see if that actually does equal this value here. Negative 7 plus 21 does equal 14. Could have done that up here as well. If we put negative 13 in here and we add positive 3 to it, you'd get negative 10. So that shows you that the answer is true. That makes our life a lot less stressful, I think, because we can check our answers whenever we solve. Well, don't get tricked up by fractions, things like this. Just simply look at what is happening to x. Okay, you're adding to x, so we're going to add the opposite. To solve it, we're going to add the opposite, or you might think subtract, which is really the same thing, but I like to think add the opposite when I deal with negative numbers. Since I have negative 1/5, I'm going to add positive 1/5 because this, again, just like the previous ones, makes 0. 0 plus x leaves me with x on this side. Bring down your equal sign and make sure you do the same thing to both sides. So I added 1/5 over here. I'm going to add 1/5 over here. All right, 2/5 plus 1/5 comes out to be 3/5. That's our solution. Number 4, the same thing. We're adding here, so we're going to add negative, or you might think subtract. Just to stay consistent, I'll go ahead and do plus negative, which is the same thing as subtracting 1/3. It's okay to subtract there because you just have a normal positive number. We're used to doing that. It's when we get those negatives in there that it gets a little bit tricky. All right, so that cancels out to be 0. So you're left with this x. And you got 7/3 minus 1/3, that's 6/3, which I believe that reduces down to 2, which is the answer there. And again, you could put 2 back in there, punch that in your calculator and see that you should get 7/3 or 7/3 or 2 1/3, I guess is what that really is there. Okay, then we move on to what happens if the variable is now being multiplied like this. Okay, take a look right there. We have 7 times x. Okay, so what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to divide that by 7. Both sides, because recall how 7 divided by 7 makes 1, and that's what you want, is 1x. The x is still there. 7 divided by 7 is 1x. Alright, so you have to do 63 divided by 7, and when we do that, we get x is equal to 9. And it doesn't matter which side you write the 9 on there, it's more that you do. Again, you could take the 9, you could put it back in for the x. You should do that, by the way, and see that 7 times 9 really is 63, and you found your solution there. For number 2, you have negative 21 times x, so you're going to, again, do the opposite. You do the opposite operation. That all makes positive 1x. But don't forget to do it to both sides. So you have 126 divided by negative 21, and negative divided by a negative is positive, and there you see the answer. It's 6. Negative 126 divided by negative 121 works out to be positive 6 for you right there. Okay, and then a couple more here. Now here's the fraction one. I'm going to rewrite this question here just to show you. We have talked about this. It's often forgotten by the time we get into this point. Remember, the goal is to get 1x, and earlier in the year we talked about how when you have a fraction times a variable, you can multiply it by the reciprocal of that number, because the reciprocal, when it multiplies, it comes out to be the answer, positive 1. Negative 3 times negative 1/3 equals 1. You don't believe me? Watch this. Negative 3 over 1 times negative 1 over 3. Negative times negative is positive. 3 times 1 is 3. 1 times 3 is 3. 3 over 3 is 1. So you've created 1x. So what I have to do over here is multiply this times negative 3 over 1. And in doing that, you multiply the top. 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. 5 times 1 is 5. And you come up with an answer of negative 3/5. Right there, okay? You feel lost on that one because we haven't done it for a while? We actually did do that way back in chapter 3, I believe, that really hard no calculator fraction test. But let's look at it again. Here's the same idea, number 4. Negative 3 halves x is equal to negative 27 over 4. I'm rewriting it here because I don't like the way my typed font is here with the fractions like that. I prefer to have the fractions a little more neat, where that fraction bar is straight across, the numerator and denominator are clear. Okay, so here you observe that you have a fraction times a variable. So I'm going to multiply times the reciprocal of that fraction. Because in doing that, again, I'll show you over here, negative 2/3 over 3 times negative 3 over 2. Maybe you recall how these can cancel out, right? 3 goes into 3 one time, 2 goes into 2 one time, and you have negative 1 times negative 1. Negative 1 times negative 1 is 1. 1x, that's the goal. Okay, so since I did this on this side, I have to do the same thing on this side, negative 2/3. Now this is an interesting one. We could go back to the rules. 2 and 4 will cancel out. 2 goes into 4 twice. 3 and 27 will go in there. 3 goes in there 9 times. Negative 9 times negative 1. Okay, it's negative times negative is positive, so we're going to have 9 as the numerator. And then 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, so you have 9 over 2. Or you could say 4.5, which we got right here. Okay, so that's a little fractional review for you. And then here's a couple more, and then we'll finish this video up, and then we'll talk about two-step equations. How about this one number here, number 5? It says 50 equals negative x. Okay, you may be thinking, what do I do with that negative? Does it mean subtract or what? It means there's negative 1 there. So you could I like to just squeeze the number in there. Basically what you have to do is you have to multiply or divide each side by negative 1, making your answer in this case negative 50, because you don't want positive x when you're done. You don't want negative x. I said that wrong. You don't want negative x. You want positive x. So you have to create positive x by dividing both sides by that negative 1. And that's what that problem came out to be right there. How about number 6? It's negative x over 5 is equal to 10. Okay, it's negative and it's being divided by 5. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do one shortcut here. I'm going to multiply it's being divided. I'm going to multiply it times negative 5 over 1. Because negative times negative will make it positive, and the 5's cancel out, giving me x. Make sure you do the same thing to the other side. 10 times negative 5 is negative 50. And that worked out coincidentally to be the same answer as the one up there. The last one right here, number 7, I'll squeeze it in over here. X divided by negative 2 is equal to negative 8. Okay, again, what's happening to x? It's being divided. So we're going to multiply it times that number is being divided by. Negative times negative makes it positive. The 2 cancels out, so it's positive x. Make sure you do the same thing to the other side. Multiply it times negative 2. Negative times negative is positive. So I got positive 16, which is what we get for the answer. You want to check that one? Stick 16 right in there. 16 divided by negative 2 is equal to negative 8. So there you go. That's the basics of solving equations with addition, subtraction, multiplication with negative numbers. Next video, what we have to talk about is what are we going to do if we have 2 things happening to the variable, and that's a 2-step equation coming up next.